Get your Rip ladies ready for the official Twitch chat.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games. Welcome to our live stream and thanks so much for joining us today. Our team had a lot of fun putting together Path of Exile's 3.15 expansion, and we've got a lot to share with you. Today's live stream is a busy one. We'll start by revealing the details of this expansion's new challenge league. Then we'll show you how this expansion is going to dramatically shake up Path of Exile's metagame in a big way. Thirdly, we'll talk about our plans to make Path of Exile more challenging, restoring some of the adrenaline and terror that you may recall from the good old days of closed beta. Next up, we're going to talk about Path of Exile Royale, the 100-player Battle Royale mode that we experimented with back in 2018. We'll be launching a restored and revamped version of Royale today, once our question and answer session with Ziggy D has concluded, and this event will run over the weekend. Anyway, there's a lot to discuss, so let's get started with the trailer for Path of Exile's next expansion.
Wow. Here we go. Battle Royale.
Many centuries ago, our people traveled to this accursed continent. We return to reclaim our lost relics.
Uh-oh.
But Rayclast grips its secrets tightly. We must wrench them from its grasp.
Uh-oh.
You know violence, we know trade. Retrieve our relics and we'll strike a deal.
Sounds like ritual.
We will follow the path of our forebears to discover their unknown fate. For one who may finally challenge them. Wealth and power will be yours, should you survive our expedition.
Expedition. Whiffed. I did not guess correctly.
Alright, I've got a lot to tell you about. Let's start with the Expedition League itself. Long ago, Calgarian explorers came to Rayclast in the hope of colonizing it. Rayclast did what it does best, and they never returned. In the Expedition League, you will meet a group of Calgarians who have set out on an expedition to investigate the fate of their ancestors, and recover special ruined artifacts they left behind. The ancient Calgarians underestimated the dangers of Rayclast, and this new expedition is no exception. They need your help to protect them from the undead that rise at their expedition sites. As you travel through Rayclast, you'll encounter the Calgarians at sites they believe their ancestors attempted to settle in the past. By the time you get there, they will have marked the site with signs indicating where chests are buried, holes indicating where their ancestors lie, and will have possibly unearthed some remnants of past Calgarian settlement. Due to the unique nature of Rayclast, the Calgarians have found that the most effective way to excavate these sites is with explosives. And that's where you come in. You'll place a chain of explosives across the expedition site, carefully planning what each blast is going to unearth. Once you push the plunger, any undead freed by the explosions rise from the ground and the slaughter begins.
Harvest cable, please.
Some of these fallen Calgar are more difficult and rewarding than others, and have been indicated with special markers. Once you have defeated the army of undead, you're free to open all of the chests you unearthed and claim your rewards. It's up to you to decide where to place the chain of explosives to maximize your gains. Do you unearth a lot of monsters? Do you unearth more special monsters? Or do you go for the chests and try to avoid combat? The ancient Calgarian explorers built structures on Rayclust, and you may encounter remnants of these at excavation sites.
Okay.
These remnants have various modifiers on them that, when destroyed, apply to monsters and chests unearthed from that explosion onwards. Remnants greatly increase drops, but have some very difficult modifiers like immune to physical damage. You'll need to be very careful with your decision of which remnants to chain your explosives through, as they substantially ramp up the difficulty and rewards of the encounters.
Force your build, buddy.
Speaking of rewards, there's a lot of cool stuff to find.
Okay.
Alongside valuable equipment and currency items are Calgarian artifacts and logbooks, which we'll talk about soon. The Calgarian traders have made this expedition to Rayclast in order to recover their ruined artifacts. There are many different types of artifacts, and each of the Calgarians is interested in a different set of them, with a unique way they want to trade them from
Wait,
you.
those aren't even unique shit.
For this expansion, we really wanted to play with the idea of having NPCs that want to trade with you in different ways. So we have themed their behaviors around the concepts of gambling, bartering, upselling, and exchanging. Let's meet the Calgarians.
This RuneScape Revenant
Tuyen
artifacts.
is a mercurial trader who maintains a positive outlook as long as he can, but if you cross a line, his temper changes quickly. Tuyen offers you items with unreasonably high prices, but he's happy to haggle. You can always buy the item at the price he's offering, but if you offer a lower price, he might accept it, counteroffer, or withdraw the item entirely if he is offended by your lowball.
Oh god.
He also occasionally sells currency items, so it's worthwhile keeping some of the artifacts he's looking for on hand just in case you see an opportunity. Grog is an average man pushed into Rayclast's dangers. He's helpful, concerned, and a bit fearful. He is very happy for you to do the fighting so that he can stay safe on the sidelines. He loves making deals and trying to upsell you. If you buy one of the items that Grog offers, he'll try to offer you a more complex deal where he improves the item via crafting. If you accept this deal, he'll try to upsell you again and again until you eventually walk away with your purchase.
Thank you, Andrew.
If you can't afford one of these incremental upgrades, you can leave and come back later with enough ruined artifacts to cover the cost. Because you don't get to supply your own starter item for this process, and have to select an item with promise from the range that he offers, his incremental crafting upgrades are priced rather cheaply. Gwenin is a cynical gambler who claims that luck depends on how hard you believe. So you really need to convince yourself that you're going to get that headhunter. If you don't, it's your fault. Gwenin shows you a set of base types with unknown properties. When you gamble by buying one, you'll receive a random item of that base type.
Diablo shop.
It could easily be a random magic item that you have no use for, but can sometimes be a valuable rare or unique item. It's probably best to prioritize gambling on base types that are most relevant to your character. Once you have exhausted all the items that interest you, it's possible to use a specific new currency item to re-roll the gamble window to a set of new items of your current level.
That's just ritual.
Sometimes a base type shows up that is a lot more expensive than it would otherwise be, and gambling on this item has a higher expected value than normal.
It's actually just
We're
torchlight.
taking the risk, though, that it could still be junk.
Honestly, just torchlight.
Danig, Warrior Skald, is the heart of the expedition, its brave leader and lawmaster. Danig is interested in specific types of ruined artifacts and wants to trade these from you for a variety of options, such as currency that lets you reroll vendor inventories, logbooks, or artifacts that other Calgarian traders are looking for. You can talk to the traders in the wild, in town, or in your hideout. They grant you access to your expedition locker, which is like the heist locker, a lockbox for League-specific items, which can be accessed in all three places also. We're adding the affinity system to these lockers. Among the many relics of the ancient Calgarians you might find at their expedition sites are logbooks. These ancient books chronicle the locations that their ancestors visited in their exploration of Rayclast. A logbook item can be rolled to have a set of explicit mods, like an endgame map. Each location within the logbook has its own implicit mods, as well as a theme that controls what types of remnants can be found there. Talk to Danig in your hideout and give him a logbook you have found to go on an expedition to one of the locations it describes. These are all exotic places that no exiles have ever traveled to before.
Cool looking portal, though.
Just like how a blighted map was one giant blight encounter with no natural monsters, the expedition you go on from a logbook is one giant expedition. Expeditions from logbooks are not only different because of their large size, but because there are special objects that you can interact with using explosives. For example, trees that contain monsters or items, passageways that reveal chests or bosses, and so on.
Jesus.
Speaking of bosses, there are some formidable ones for you to seek out, and a set of valuable new unique items and base types that can only come from expedition content.
And base types.
The Calgarian people are not from Rayclast, so the items do not have the same defensive properties that ours do. Instead of armor, evasion, and energy shield, they have ward.
Ha!
This new base type is a pair of boots that grants ward and can get mods that improve it. The way that ward works is that you have a certain amount of it, and that amount is fully deducted from the first incoming hit that you receive.
A steel skin.
Your ward is then disabled and takes 5 seconds to re-enable.
Steel skin.
At that point, the next hit you receive is substantially mitigated in the same way.
It's a steel skin.
It's quite a different style of defensive property and works very well in conjunction with systems like evasion, block, or dodge. As the undead enemies you unearth in expedition encounters are fallen Calgarian explorers, they also have a ward rather than traditional defenses. This unique helmet allows you to go all in with ward as a defensive option for your character. It causes all increases to energy shield to affect your ward instead, grants you a bunch of ward, and helps it recover faster.
Level 25 helmet.
This other unique helmet is also on a new base type that grants ward instead of other defense types, but its properties don't interact with ward.
What?
Instead, it prevents you from dealing critical strikes and grants you battle mage, which adds spell damage equal to the damage of your main hand weapon. The new base types and uniques I showed you here are just some of the ones you'll be able to discover when you play next week.
So some of those are base types and some of those are uniques. And
so that's the Expedition League. Each of the developers I have spoken to has liked a different aspect of it, but I have really personally been enjoying the different trade mechanics offered by the Calgarian NPCs. The gamble window takes me back 20 years on a nostalgic trip, and Tuyin's haggling manages to capture the intense feeling I get when negotiating.
Only goes so far.
And anyone who really knows me knows how much I love negotiating. This expansion also promises to massively shake up the
look like
Exile
reskin
metagame.
skills. So
And we're doing that by introducing new gems, lots and lots of
so
new
far, half
gems.
of those look like they're fucking bullshit.
For quite a while now, the way we have approached new skills in Path of Exile expansions is to make a bunch of gems themed around an entirely new build or dramatically augmenting a few existing builds. The blood skills in the Ultimatum expansion are a good example of this. While this approach is great in terms of creating interesting new builds, it doesn't always affect every character game-wide. In order to achieve this big metagame shakeup, we've come up with a crazy idea for the Expedition expansion, adding a gigantic pile of new gems at once, spread among as many different playstyles as possible. Each of these gems can of course be used by many different classes, but we use the list of 19 ascendancy classes for inspiration when planning these gems.
Okay, seems
Our
good.
goal here is that regardless of which build you're playing, there will be new gems that you can add to your character.
Okay.
Let's go through the 19 new skill and support gems.
Okay.
The Earthbreaker support gem can be linked to any slam skill. Upon use, it summons an ancestor totem that uses that slam on your behalf. In this example,
It's just
we've
melee
created
totem.
a build that summons multiple ancestor totems that each wield tectonic slam. As you can see, this build covers a
Slam
large
totems.
area in fiery death,
Understood.
while you get to stay out
2
of
words
harm's
required. Slam totems. Next one.
This is a powerful option for chieftains in
Moving on.
particular, due to the various totem bonuses available on their ascendancy passive tree. Adept players will also be wondering if the Earthbreaker support allows you to create leap slamming totems, and the answer is absolutely. As with other ancestor totems, the Earthbreaker support also provides a buff to you, granting some increased area of effect with melee skills. Rage Vortex provides a new way to consume your rage, unleashing a whirling vortex that rapidly hits enemies within its range.
Blade Storm wishes
It
it
gains damage and area of effect based on how much rage was sacrificed. The vortex slows down when enemies survive
God,
being
it's
hit
so
by it,
slow, though.
causing it to deal intense damage to tough targets. While you can only have one Rage Vortex active at a time, characters such as Berserkers who are able to generate a lot of rage quickly will find it a great way to augment their damage.
Look at
output.
his rage. It's not going up that quickly.
Bone Shatter strikes your enemies with a forceful blow. If an enemy is stunned by this attack, a powerful shockwave is released. The area of effect of the shockwave is determined by the duration of the stun you inflicted.
God, stun builds.
Each time you use Bone Shatter against an enemy, you take physical damage yourself and gain a trauma stack. The more stacks you have, the more damage Bone Shatter will deal to both you and your enemies.
Bone saws.
This
ready?
self-damage mechanic makes the Juggernaut the ideal class for this skill, because they have easy access to lots of armor to mitigate the downside. Also, the Juggernaut has ascendancy passives that grant increased stun duration, which help make sure the shockwave is as large as possible. Defiance Banner is a new purely defensive banner skill.
Ooh, that's
While you
spicy.
carry the Defiance Banner, it increases the armor and evasion of nearby allies while reducing the critical strike chance of nearby enemies. It also gains stages while carried near enemies and can be placed on the ground to enhance its effects.
That might
When
be
the
good.
Defiance
You're never
Banner
gonna
is
place
placed,
it.
it inflicts a taunt on enemies for a duration, based
No,
on the
never
number
gonna
of
place it.
stages the
Could
banner
be
had
good, though.
accumulated while it was
Banner's
carried.
just another aura.
Enemies
so.
affected by this taunt also
Or
deal
be
less
good.
damage to all targets. The next new skill is Shield Crush, which swipes your shield towards enemies and sends out forceful waves of damage based on the stats of your shield.
Now that could be
These
spicy.
waves can shotgun enemies with up to 2 hits at once, so while Shield Crush is great against groups, it's also effective against single targets and can be used alongside Shield Charge and Spectral Shield Throw. We've improved both of
you're
these
not gonna use all
skills so
of
that the overall aggressive shield build is more powerful.
Maybe just shields in general. It's kind of cool. I like that one.
The new Behead support gem can only support strike skills and is basically like a mini headhunter. When a supported strike kills a rare enemy, you'll steal one of its modifiers. Obviously, this gem can't be as crazy as the full headhunter experience, so it comes with some restrictions.
Inspired learning?
Stolen modifiers can persist for 20 seconds, and slaying another rare enemy will replace the modifier you have active.
Oh, dead.
The Behead
Dead on
support gem
arrival.
also
Okay,
grants
never
you more
mind.
damage against
Trash.
enemies.
Gone.
on the
Instantly gone.
In conjunction with the
Instantly
Slayer's
gone.
Bane of Legends
Gone.
Ascendancy
Instantly
Pistol,
gone.
this bonus really embraces the execution
Instantly
theme
gone.
of Behead support.
Fucking Christ.
Storm Rain
Oh
is a
my
new bow
God,
skill
what a
that fires
meme.
arrows that stick into the ground. These arrows periodically pulse with lightning
What a
damage that
meme.
arcs to nearby arrows. This skill works very
can't
well with
believe
multiple
that.
projectiles because you can quickly set up a large patch of lightning.
Dead
death.
out the gate. Like,
Existing ballista skills in Path of Exile pick their own
Fucking
targets,
dead.
like sentry guns do. They'll start shooting immediately and will generally target the closest enemies. While this behavior is usually great, sometimes you want fine control over what your ballistas will fire at. The focused ballista support gem causes your ballistas to pick the same targets as you,
Oh,
and they
so
will
it's,
only fire when you fire your own ranged
death mark
weapon.
for ballistas.
It also makes the ballistas fire a lot faster than they otherwise would.
That's
The
pretty.
support
That's
gem
really good
allows you
for
to
accuracy
effectively
stack
focus
builds.
fire on specific enemies such as bosses.
There's a lot of reskins though. These abilities are like not super generic.
Explosive Concoction is quite a novel skill. It introduces several new concepts that haven't been explored with skills before. Here you can see the Pathfinder throwing an explosive projectile at monsters.
Yep.
Firstly, you may notice that the Pathfinder isn't holding any weapons. This is because Explosive
Flask?
Concoction is the very first ranged skill that can and must be used unarmed. It's also the first skill that directly interacts with the benefits provided by your flasks.
I knew it. Yep.
When you throw your Explosive
Very
Concoction
cool.
onto a targeted area, it deals fire damage and uses available charges from your Ruby, Sapphire, and Topaz flasks to grant bonuses based on what
Interesting.
flask charges were used.
Might be shit.
The
but
skill still
very
works even if
interesting.
you don't have the appropriate flasks or charges to consume, but correctly managing your flask setup can greatly enhance the power
Very
of the skill.
interesting.
What we really love about this gem is
Now
that it brings
that
to
is
life the
cool
idea
design.
of throwing your flasks at enemies and having them explode. In conjunction with the flask-focused benefits provided by the Pathfinder's Ascendancy
Now
passive
that
skills,
is cool
we're really
design.
excited to see what new playstyles are enabled by this gem. This is the Ambush skill. It teleports you up to an enemy, blinds them, and exerts your next one-handed melee attack. This exerted attack has a high critical strike chance and multiplier.
Shadow step.
In addition to this helping your assassinations, you can also use Ambush to quickly re-engage targets after dashing away.
Shadow step. Oh my motion.
Voltaxic Burst grants a buff that counts down to 0, triggering a burst of lightning damage around you with a portion of that damage converted to chaos
Shitty
damage.
winter orb.
Enemies slain by your Voltaxic Burst will also explode, dealing chaos damage around them based on their maximum life.
Or man.
You can stack up many Voltaxic Bursts on yourself at the same time. Consider using duration modifiers to modify the timing of the explosion so that you can cast a skill from safety and then move into a strategic position before it
That
explodes.
looks so clunky though. So clunk.
When you use Blade Trap, you throw out a mechanical device with 2 copies of your weapon attached. These blades spin rapidly in a circle a set number of times, dealing damage to anything they pass through. When dual wielding, the trap rotates faster but deals damage based on both weapons.
Alright.
Because it's a trap, Blade Trap behaves a little differently to other attack skills by operating independently of your attack speed. This means you'll have some interesting itemization choices to make in focusing more on damage modifiers rather than the typical focus of maximizing attack speed.
So like big clunky slow things.
Summon Reaper creates a single powerful minion that uses fast melee physical
do we
attacks
have
which
here?
cause bleeding. While the Reaper is active, you can use the skill again to direct the Reaper to a specific location, dealing a powerful attack along its path.
What do we have here?
The Reaper wants to be your only minion. It reduces the life and damage of your other minions, and will consume them to heal itself and gain damage and speed buffs.
What do we have here?
When designing this new skill for the Necromancer, we wanted to explore the idea of having a single ultimate minion. While there were ways
like
to
that
somewhat
idea.
achieve this before, the Reaper is quite different in its abilities and interactions with other minions.
I wish it was bigger.
It also feels much more active and directly under your control. One quick note though, the Reaper will absolutely eat your animated guardian if you're not careful.
As you should.
Forbidden Rite is a powerful new spell that fires an exploding chaos projectile at a
It's a
targeted
soul.
area. It also targets a selection of enemies
just
in an
Soul
area
Rend. Calm
around the
down,
player's
Chris.
location and fires projectiles at them too. But be careful, Forbidden Rite also inflicts damage on you when cast. If you can find a clever way to mitigate this harmful downside, you'll have devastating and widespread damage at your fingertips.
Yeah, it's juiced Soul Rend. Could be good. Juiced Soul Rend.
The Eye of Winter is a large projectile that fires out a barrage of cold projectiles in a spiral formation as it travels. When it reaches its maximum distance
Mechanically,
or collides with the terrain,
this
it
looks very good.
explodes, firing out even more projectiles in a spiral.
This could be a very good mechanic.
This type of skill is one we've been wanting to bring to Path of Exile for a long time, and we felt that this new collection of skills was the perfect place to showcase it. This Inquisitor is using the new Battle Mage's Cry skill, which taunts nearby enemies and exerts your subsequent attacks, causing them to trigger a linked spell on your next melee hit.
Oh, it's a
Here you can see the player taunting
Cast
enemies with
when
Battle
Warcry.
Mage's Cry and using Consecrated Path to teleport to enemies.
Cast
The
when
slam is
Warcry.
exerted, triggering Firestorm to rain down on those enemies. In order to assist with scaling both attack and spell damage, the buff this Warcry provides lets your spell damage apply to your attacks. This property is usually only available on wands and certain unique items. Mana Bond is a somewhat unusual gem in that its source of power relies on your current mana. Upon use, it creates a rune that explodes at a location you're targeting. This explosion can either deal more damage or cover a larger area depending on the state of your mana. The more mana that's missing from your mana pool, the more damage Mana Bond will deal, as it converts a percentage of your missing mana into added lightning damage. The more full your mana pool is, the more area the explosion will cover. This means that being adept
kinda
at managing
jank.
your mana pool becomes highly advantageous. For example, having slightly
RP
higher
refund.
mana while clearing a map provides greater clear speed, but when fighting tougher enemies, having a lower
that
current
means?
mana amount is better. Absolution has been designed for Guardians as a spell version of Dominating Blow. Absolution deals a
Spell
damaging
dominate.
shockwave in a targeted area. When it kills an enemy, it summons a Sentinel of Absolution, which also deals damage by casting Absolution itself. The Sentinels also periodically cast a larger version of Absolution on the cooldown. While the Sentinels version of Absolution can't summon even more minions, they are a powerful army to fight against.
So,
Spectral Helix throws a spectral copy of your melee weapon, which spirals outwards from you, dealing
Hammered
damage
in
to any enemies it passes
classic
through.
D2 hammer.
The design of the skill achieves what we've
Been
always
how
wanted
many
Val
years
Spectral
people have
Throw.
asked for hammered?
We thought it was a really fun idea for a skill, but because of the limitations caused
Well,
by the
it's a
soul
really fun idea.
gathering
It's
requirements
been
of
around
Val
for 15
skills,
years.
it wasn't possible to use Val Spectral Throw as a primary skill. Now that Spectral Helix can live up to this purpose, we've reworked Val Spectral Throw, which we'll reveal closer to release. One of the other issues that Val Spectral Throw had was that it didn't work very well in indoors areas. However, Spectral Helix improves upon this, as the projectiles that spiral outwards can also bounce off of walls and proceed to hit enemies, rather than simply disappearing upon collision.
Okay.
Over the last few years, Path of Exile has really suffered from player power creep. As a consequence of trying to make compelling content, each expansion we release
go.
either gives players more axes on which to improve their character, more effective skills to use, or ways to craft better and more powerful items. Measuring from closed beta to now, this Expedition expansion is our 30th Path of
What does
Exile
this chart
release.
mean? What
The
does
amount
this
of power
chart
creep
mean?
varies per release, of course, with systems like Ascendancy classes
How do you
providing,
even plot
like
this?
20, 30, 40% power creep at once? Like with Compound Interest, it would only take
stuff is
8% more player power
What are
per
these
expansion
numbers?
from new items, crafting, character systems, item acquisition opportunities, and new skills for player power to grow tenfold
random
since the game's
graphs they
been
just
out.
throw up.
And tenfold is roughly what we measure the increase in player power to be. We may nerf the most out-of-hand cases every launch, but we're only reducing them back down to close to the new baseline. The average Path of Exile character gets more and more powerful. While we do occasionally add new endgame challenges that are appropriate for the current power level of top characters, the rest of the game just becomes relatively easier and easier. Some games handle this by just endlessly and exponentially scaling monster life and damage to counteract player power growth. Eventually, the numbers get too large and you need to crunch them all down again. This is a really cheap approach and makes the game feel like a treadmill where the developers are just turning a knob as they hand you new power, keeping you in the same place forever. We don't want to treat Path of Exile like that, and hence our solutions are more complicated. At the same time, one of the issues is that players will always pick the most powerful way of interacting with any game system, even when that's not actually fun to play. This leads to behaviors like Flask Piano, or the way that everyone just picks support gems that basically add pure damage. As game designers, it is our responsibility to make sure that the most powerful behaviors are also the most fun to engage with. With that in mind, the balance changes that we are making in Expedition are far-reaching and are going to affect almost all characters.
Okay.
Our goal is not to just nerf specific builds, but to improve the game, its challenge, and to make sure that people want to pick fun build choices. Anyone who played Path of Exile during its closed beta 9 years ago can attest to how challenging the campaign was to play through.
Me.
Early monsters were dangerous and terrifying, able to kill a character in a few seconds of inattention. Players feared going into the ship graveyard cave because of the flicker strike ghosts. They were careful around rowers because a couple of unlucky charges could outright kill them.
Correct.
Trying to kill a Goatman Shaman while he had Molten Shell up
You
was
know
a
what?
pretty terrible idea.
It wasn't fun.
Nowadays, however, the game is a lot easier. We added
It
level
wasn't
2
fun
and 4
then.
support gems
It
without
won't be
increasing
fun
the
now.
difficulty of the game to compensate at all. Modern League mechanics shower the player in rare items from early levels, and we didn't make the game any harder in response. In fact, it's very interesting to compare the difficulty of League content with that of the base game. For a few years now, we've been shipping difficult leagues where monster life and damage values are a lot higher than the regular monsters that players fight between those League encounters. Players enjoy League content because it's challenging. They also told us they really enjoyed the Path of Exile 2 demo at ExileCon, and it was tuned to be almost punitive in terms of difficulty. One thing we learned from building that demo was that it's okay for some monsters to be able to run 20 to 40% faster than the player.
That's
In
true.
Path of Exile 1's first act, there isn't a single monster that moves faster than the player's default movement speed.
Yep.
We are rebalancing the campaign to be challenging. So far, we have focused mostly on Act 1, but with each coming expansion, we'll be extending this further. Our plan is that within a year or so, we'll have reviewed or touched every single monster in the game. While this additional challenge probably won't stop our most skilled players easily dominating the campaign or running through it to get to maps quickly, it will mean that players who engage with the content will find a consistent difficulty level between League content and regular content. It's worth noting that the behavioral and balance changes to monsters will definitely affect their map versions. For quite some time, Path of Exile players and developers
Rare
have been
Flask.
keen for a big rework to its Flask system.
Rare flasks, 4
In the
flasks.
endgame, flasks grant really powerful buffs for a number of seconds after use.
4 rare
And these
flasks.
buffs allow the player to kill monsters quickly, filling the flasks up so they can be used as soon as they run out.
4 rare flasks.
With 5 such flasks equipped, the correct behavior was to spam the 1 to 5 keys repeatedly to keep all the flasks constantly up without any downsides.
Flask cooldown.
This flask piano playstyle was popular enough that players were improvising devices to hit all of those keys at once.
Global flask cooldown.
Spamming the same set of keys repeatedly to get a powerful set of buffs that rival the power you get from your entire set of equipped items is not a fun game mechanic. It's unbalanced and certainly isn't nice on your wrist. It prevents us from balancing the game well for players who aren't smashing their keyboard constantly and seriously restricts the design space we can use on flasks. In addition,
Global flask
certain
cooldown.
unique flasks completely outclass other ones in terms of raw damage output.
Fucking taste
It was pretty clear to us that Path of Exile will be a lot better if we did some serious work on flasks to make sure that their incentives were aligned with fun rather than with spamming blindly. Most utility flasks and unique flasks have been rebalanced. Expect a lot less permanent power from flasks. Flasks that provide raw defense or raw power are the ones with the biggest nerfs. Some flasks have been selectively buffed a bit if they were underpowered or less popular. In the Expedition expansion, there are now 3 ways that you can use flasks. You can either continue to use the rebalanced ones the traditional way, or you can apply one of the 2 new types of currency items to your flasks. The Instilling Orb and Enkindling Orb drop as part of the regular drop pool from regular monsters and chests. The Instilling Orb will cause
auto
a flask to
flasks.
be used automatically upon a specific condition being met. For example, when its charges become full or when you become affected by Ignite. This means that in the cases where you would previously want to time a specific flask usage, you can now rely on it happening automatically, with the only trade-off being that it may consume charges that you otherwise wouldn't intend it to. There are a variety of different conditions, and a random one is enchanted onto your flask, overwriting the others each time you use an Instilling Orb on it.
Okay.
The Enkindling Orb
Will we
prevents
ever
utility
see these
flasks
orbs?
from gaining charges while active, but
Or is it
provides
gonna
a
be like
big
Heist
boost
Orb
to their
gonna be
effect,
non-existent?
duration, or various ways they interact with their charges. There are various different types of boosts, so you can use more orbs to reroll for the one that you want. When a flask removes a curse, it no longer applies a period of immunity to curses. Flasks that remove ailments now only provide a period of immunity to that ailment if they actually removed it. So if you get ignited, use a dowsing flask to remove the ignite and to gain immunity for a while.
Unless they balance
you
the
can't
tree,
spam the
you're
flask
just going
before
to
you're
still get
ignited to be
immunity.
permanently immune.
It's now just a
If you
priority.
want permanent mitigation of ailments, there are other options for your
Flask's
build.
got heavy nerves.
Note that we have rebalanced ailment mitigation in general, so
Nope,
there aren't
never
a few
mind.
options that completely outclass the rest. Monster density in Path of Exile gets a lot higher as you play through the game. When we initially balanced blast charge generation a decade ago, we did not anticipate the levels of monster density we would reach by 2021. Monsters in Acts 6 through 10 now generate fewer flash charges, and monsters in maps generate even fewer still. So now there's a lot more strategy involved with Flask use. Flasks don't gain as many charges, so are a little harder to constantly spam, and aren't designed to provide such a powerful slew of permanent buffs. But you can control which provide larger than normal effects, and which are triggered automatically as part of your build. We have reworked existing flasks such as Basalt and Aquamarine flasks, and have introduced new Corundum and Gold flasks.
Stun immunity flask and gold
For
rarity
a while
flask.
now, we have been concerned with the power gap between support gems. There are gems that grant huge multiplicative damage bonuses, and there are gems that do a bunch of stuff you don't really care about.
Goodbye, Echo.
When you're building a character, by far the correct choice is just to stack on all the multiplicative damage bonuses and ignore all the interesting utility support gems, because their opportunity cost is just too high.
Bye, Echo.
We are reducing the damage bonuses on the support gems that are clearly just about huge damage boosts, and trying to give them impactful and appropriate downsides. For example, the Controlled Destruction support gem now penalizes critical strikes multiplicatively.
Rip.
Overall, this works out to a total of somewhere around 20%, potentially as high as 40% damage reduction for a character using a fully 6-linked skill with entirely damaged support gems. There's much less impact for characters that use utility support gems or those who didn't have a 6-link setup. This achieves two goals for us. Firstly, the gap between good and bad support gems has been narrowed, creating more interesting build opportunities. Secondly, player damage output in the endgame is reduced, which is a goal for this balance pass. As I mentioned, we want to iteratively restore challenge to Path of Exile. It's worth clarifying that we haven't buffed unused utility support gems as part of this balance pass. It's fully intentional that it's a reduction of power for the most damaging ones. When we're designing skills for Path of Exile, the mana cost of the skill is a mechanism to allow us to have larger impactful effects. Bigger skills should cost more mana to cast. Unfortunately, this entire mechanism is currently bypassed by triggering skills, as this skips their mana cost. This basically means that we can't design really powerful spells. In 3.15, triggering skills through support gems will require paying their mana cost. In fact, sometimes it now costs more than casting a gem by hand. Thankfully though, this isn't very hard with well-constructed characters. Certain support gems that were originally disabled from supporting triggered skills, like Arcane Surge, can now be used to support them. Builds that use triggered skills are some of the most interesting characters in Path of Exile, and they are often the best representation of the craziness that our character customization system allows. We're confident that they are just as powerful as before, but we now have more interesting design space to explore with future skills. Now let's talk about movement skills. As you know, most interaction with monster behavior is essentially bypassed if you're using an extremely effective movement skill. This is okay if you're specialized deeply into customizing that skill, but it's currently the default state for any character if you use Flame Dash, Smoke Mine, or Dash without any further investment. These skills have been rebalanced to be more in line with other movement skills. These are not huge numeric nerfs, but do mean that there is scope for improving the performance of the skills by specializing around them. There are many other balance changes in 3.15, which you can read about in the Balance Manifesto and patch notes next week. To be honest, there are a lot of nerfs here. We completely understand that this level of change will make some people nervous, but it's time we start actively combating power creep and fixing game systems that haven't been working the way we intended them to. I think that the metagame of Expedition is going to be fascinating. The reduction of overall player power, combined with all of the opportunities from the new skills and Flask system changes, should create entirely new sets of builds that we haven't previously seen. You guys are always surprising us with what you do, and we can't wait to see what you come up with here. So back in early 2018, there was a trend where every online game was releasing a Battle Royale mode and getting a lot of good press in the process. We had a running joke in the office that our fast development speed meant that we could probably add a Battle Royale mode to Path of Exile in one day of development. As April Fool's Day approached, we tried to do exactly that. We pulled a few developers together and asked them to spend no more than one workday each on their contributions to this new mode. On April 1st, 2018, we launched Path of Exile Royale.
Goldram! Yeah, buddy!
It was a quick and dirty job, so we only left the game mode turned on for a couple of days. It went pretty well considering it had no custom balance whatsoever.
Oh my god, I'm getting destroyed!
After April 1st, we turned the mode off and forgot all about it. But the community did not forget. In fact, they've been quite keen to remember it constantly and to urge us to bring it back. But that wouldn't be easy, as to actually make it a decent experience would require a lot of custom balance, playtesting, and feature implementation work. A few months ago, we decided to do exactly that. Path of Exile Royale will return today. In fact, immediately after the QA section of this livestream. We're going to run it for the weekend as a test, and then turn it on every weekend for a while, starting the week after Expedition's launch. We'll patch it between weekends with balance tweaks, and if it's popular over the long term, new features. We have no idea what the long-term viability of this game mode is going to be like, so we'll run it for this league and then assess where things stand. Our initial version of Royale from 2018 used Path of Exile's default passive skill tree, which didn't have interesting options for characters that rarely got to level 10.
PvP tree.
It also used all of our skill gems and unique items as is, where many of the interesting ones were way too high level for these super low level characters to ever find. We've made a completely new Royale-specific passive skill tree that has everything you need to quickly adapt your character for high-speed PvP combat. It features approximately 90 new custom notable passives, a special new left-aligned window so you can stay aware of your surroundings while allocating skills, and you gain 2 passive skill points per level. You're also able to allocate passive skills from any of the tree's starting locations, regardless of which character class you picked. We have created low-level versions of around 50 iconic skill gems, 20 support gems, and over 70 unique items. These Royalified items are appropriate for low-level play and include quite a few things that are usually only available at substantially higher character levels in the core game. The whole island has been improved. We've made the terrain more varied and interesting so that the fights feel different depending on where they take place. You'll encounter flask troves which provide charges for your flasks. These troves periodically replenish themselves, so expect a lot of combat to occur around them. There are many other small improvements you'll notice when you play Royale, such as an improved spectator mode, improved leaderboard, and ability to pillage items from players through a special interface rather than having them clutter the ground. You don't need to delete and remake your character for each game, as you could just reuse your old one, which is automatically reset to level 1. Your prize for coming first on a Royale event is this new Roa Dinner hideout decoration. It's a bit like a Challenge League totem as it grows more impressive as you win more events. Royale is available to play today, as soon as our Q&A session concludes in about 45 minutes. So patch your Path of Exile client, and when we're done with the Q&A, log in and click to join the Royale event at the bottom right of the screen. For more detailed information on how the mode works, check out the news post we just made on pathofexile.com. We'll be running the event from today over the weekend.
Cool beans.
If you don't get a chance to play Royale over the next few days, we'll run it again every weekend other than Expedition's launch weekend for the next few months. Please check it out and let us know your feedback. Keep an eye on our news over the next week as we reveal the finer details of what's coming in Expedition, including the full patch notes on Tuesday, US time. We'll move on to the Q&A shortly to answer your burning questions, but first, let's have a look at the new supporter packs that are available right now to celebrate the launch of Expedition and help fund ongoing development of Path of Exile 2, and special modes like Royale. The Soulkeeper and Aesir supporter packs come with masses of points to spend in the store, social frames, forum titles and badges, a download of the digital soundtrack, and of course exclusive cosmetic microtransactions like armor sets and weapon skins. The Soulkeeper series comes with an exclusive pet, and the Aesir series an exclusive set of wings.
Cat time.
On top of the traditional small and medium-sized supporter packs that are consistent with ones we've released in the past, we're also adding an optional new third tier for each series. This new tier includes an exclusive apparition portal effect and a slightly better ratio of points per dollar spent. The introduction of these new packs should give you more options for what combination of each pack series you purchase. Like always, it's possible to upgrade between pack tiers within each series. Thank you so much for your support. Purchases of these supporter packs are the only thing that fund the ongoing development of Path of Exile, as well as expansions like Expedition and Path of Exile Royale.
The only thing?
The reveals we showed you today are already live on YouTube for you to link to your friends in case they missed the live stream. Please do so. We'd love to have as many of you as possible joining our expedition next week. It's time for the Q&A. If you have any questions from what we've shown you today, please get them ready because I'm about to be joined by Ziggy D as we answer your questions from Twitch chat. And after that, see you in Royale.
the only thing that funds it. That's an interesting statement. I don't think it's the only thing that funds it. What about their large investor, Tencent? Is that the dog thing, Daedalus? How many uniques? We don't know yet. Is the website up yet? Is it totally crashing? I can't. Yeah. Is it not out yet? It's like, I not click expedition? No. I don't want the trailer. I want the page. Is the league page out yet? Live stream details, live stream announcements. We have to wait till after the live stream, I guess? Okay. Well, thank you, Colt, for the 5 gifted subs. Appreciate it, big time, man. The Battle Royale thing is cool, and I'm glad it exists. However, it's very unfortunate that they released it right after everything we just watched. Because the league itself looks very complicated, some I would say overly complicated, similar to how Heist was. Has an interesting shot mechanic, it's kind of like Ritual. It has somewhat Blight-esque maps. However, the bulk of those gems they introduced, a lot of them look like basically slightly tweaked or reskinned abilities or ported skills, so not really much there. And then, yeah, doesn't look like that cool. The Flask nerf is sad. Nerfing to all the supports is sad. Triggered abilities kind of seems sad. Yeah, a lot of nerfs. Really nothing.
Good
really
morning
positive.
from Australia and New Zealand exiles. I'm Ziggy D, and I'm joined here with
Nothing
none other
really
than
positive.
the Chris Wilson. Good morning, Chris. How's it going?
Couple
Thanks
cool
for going
skills,
good.
but mostly just nerfs.
That was a lot. That was pretty spicy set of reveals there. And
Yeah, we've been apprehensive about that one.
yeah, I imagine there might be a little bit of nerves going into some of the nerfy side of things. I almost said it there, in fact. Some pretty big changes here with flasks and general balance and stuff like that. That I imagine a little bit make you a little bit nervous to reveal.
Still nothing. Oh,
Yeah, we're
okay.
pretty confident in the changes, though. Some of them have been a long
So-
time coming, and it's often the case that we'll have something we want to do in a given league and then push it, both
Thank you, Barbara.
because it's hard to rip the bandit off and make nerfs, and also because the more we make at the
Listen
same
to a little
time,
bit
the
of the
better we
Q&A.
can get the
Normally it's
balance by
pretty-
balancing around them
Really
simultaneously.
nothing much here.
Yeah,
Because
we'll get into the nerfs and
not for
different
nothing, but like
changes and flasks and things like
Ziggy
that.
D.
A little bit
Well,
later, but
I don't
I'm
think
gonna
I've ever
start
heard
off
him in his
with
Q&As
some
ever ask a question that was
expedition
something that
league
wasn't
that's
like,
been
you know,
revealed.
he can't ask real questions.
My
He's
first
asking
question
fluff
is, what sort of
questions.
failure states do
The
these
whole Q&A is
expeditions
fluff
have?
questions,
Like,
but
you
we'll
can
still listen
guide
to a little
during
of
the
it.
explosive excavation
It's mostly
process.
bullshit, though.
Does it fail, or can
You
you
can't
come
be like,
straight
why
back
do you
into
feel
it?
like you just
It's
turned
pretty
in
permissive. You
all
can come back in,
COC
basically,
builds,
there's
so
no timers and
he's not
no
gonna ask that type of
automatic
shit.
failure.
It's all-
Essentially, as long as you've got enough
He's
plaudits
like a
to
yes
get to
man
the area,
question, yeah.
then it's easy to come back and resume, whether you're placing explosives or doing the combat part of it.
Thank you, Zeke.
If
Appreciate
you're
that,
playing one of
economy.
the expeditions that's accessed through a logbook
Nerve
and it's
City,
got
though.
6 portals, like a map does, for example, so providing you haven't depleted those, you can come right back.
I imagine with a different power level for people to get used to, that'll be helpful.
Yes.
The
There'll be
fact that
some-
there's not like a hard failure state, lose things a la Heist or something like that in this situation. Are the logbooks the mappy system for this endgame only, or are they available sooner?
They're available sooner. They kick in, I think, Act 3 onwards, so you'll start to get them relatively soon.
So that'll give me another thing that'll make it take a lot more time to get to endgame as I get
You
distracted.
can think
with
of it a
that.
bit like the temples of Exile, of course, but they're
Right.
fully tradable. So if you don't want to play them and just want to rush to maps, you can always trade them for some
Auto quality?
currency.
Probably.
You also added geared gambles. I'm just gonna say. I mean, you touched on it with the 20-year nostalgia.
What's it called?
That's awesome. That's not a question.
Castnamer's
though.
taken all
Are
trigger
there
gems
any
now require
specific,
mana.
like, new uniques
Sometimes
or
higher
items
mana.
that we can only get
So,
through the unidentified gambling with
basically
Brennan,
they're just
or
going to be
the other
dead on
vendors, I
arrival,
suppose.
I think.
So we intentionally didn't put any items
Unless they build
exclusively
in
in
mana
those
hit or
windows.
something.
We didn't want it so that players absolutely have to engage with those systems to get those items. But you can get some quite interesting stuff. Like if you're lucky, for example, while gambling for an item, you can get influenced items, for example. You know, it's not just vanilla
I
rares.
asked the
There's
hard-hitting
some
questions?
fun treasures hidden
Yeah,
away
but then I
there.
would never be invited back.
Any
to the...
other things like from other leagues, like temple modifiers or anything like
Yeah,
that?
when we do the
or are you kind of
manifesto
sticking
there.
with the new line of thinking of keeping those things to their respective leagues?
We are trying to keep rewards specific for the content that generates them, but there's some interesting surprises that people will discover when they're doing their gambles.
All right, I'm pretty excited about the haggling and the geared gambling. Now you mentioned immunity to physical damage, and I must admit I cringed a little bit because I generally dislike immunities. I've got questions about that. As immunities effectively hard shut down specific builds, will these be easy to avoid?
You can choose where you place the explosives, and so you just absolutely don't need to go anywhere near those remnants if you'd rather go somewhere else. And we prefer to have really hard modifiers like this, because either immunity to physical is kind of going to prevent you doing the encounter, or it's going to not affect you at all, and it's entirely upside to tag that one. And so because of this, there's interesting placement choices you'll have to make. It's never going to be...
So an interesting point was just raised in chat. Datadog asked why people are mad about the game getting harder. I don't understand. I don't think anyone really has much of it, any sort of qualm with the game getting more difficult. I think people mostly are upset about entire specific swaths of build being no longer playable in their current iterations. For example, someone in chat mentioned that they have 3-4 mirrors in their COC build, which exists in standard. Now, if a build has gotten nerfed in previous times, unless it was a major mechanical nerf, it remains playable. If they make it so COC now costs mana, or even as they describe it, a higher amount of mana to trigger the ability, the entire build no longer works. So that totally makes it so the build is impossible to play. So you would have to basically change the build in its entirety and now nullify the existence of all your gear. Especially with something as specific as COC, the gear is extremely specific towards the build. So it makes it so it's basically like all that harvest COC gear I have. If they nerf COC to where it requires mana, the build becomes unplayable, especially considering the other nerfs to doing it. So it's not just that one nerf, it's that, Control Destruction nerfed, Flasks nerfed, like everything adds together to totally kill a build. And it's really just mostly impactful for people who don't have the luxury of playing a lot because they have jobs and families and that sort of stuff. So those standard players, it's pretty rough. But also going forward, it's demoralizing in a way, not only just seeing the game getting harder, but everything getting nerfed with no real buffs. So it's not as much as it's like, things getting harder that's not fun. It's just that I don't think I saw a single thing that they said this is getting buffed. There was new skills really, and a couple of them look cool, but it was just like nothing but nerfs across the board for the second league in the row. That's pretty rough to see.
Very much enjoyed the new trend towards making things a lot more co-op handy. Does the currency stuff kind of like spread out between the players? Like both people get access to the trade windows, or only if it's their map, or how does that work?
My understanding, I'm just going to check this. Hey guys, all the players can access the event.
There's the first dev check. On that note, let's check what we have over here. Dev check 1 was my my cutoff point. Okay, so what do we have for expansion expedition shit? Dev check 1 has begun. It only took 5 minutes. So, we have anything cool here. Cowgirls using explosives. Yada, 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 yada. The chart they showed also was very confusing. They had this weird chart that made it seem like there was a power spike post-harvest. Their chart didn't include ritual and ultimatum, because if it did, after harvest it would be a hard plummet. So I thought that was very interesting. I don't know if I can even show it, because I can't rewind this, can I? No, I have no way of rewinding it. Okay, so like their chart basically looked like they had a chart. I can show it. Basically, it looked like this. It went fucking zip, zap, zoop, zap, zop, and then it cut off over here. And this was harvest right here, right? And this was like whatever league was, heist or something. And then there was something else over here. You saw that. It's in Discord. What's in Discord? The chart? I'm being tagged in the chart. Oh, here we go. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so here's the chart, right? If you were to take this, chart though, interestingly enough, right, and you were to extend it out more, and you had it keep going where harvest ended, it would be like ritual, ultimatum. So that would be ritual, right? And then over here would be ultimatum. So the reason that they cut the chart off at harvest is because after harvest, power tanked for the player. We lost so much here, and we lost even more here. But that doesn't work for their argument, so they just cut the chart off at harvest. They just totally ignored whatever. In my point, I don't care. I know you're saying each side represents the league. I still don't believe it though. Like saying the players are somehow strong, these are more powerful is like 0% chance. 0% chance. If they think people got stronger after harvest, they're out of their fucking minds. that was been the pinnacle. Like, it was no way it got any whatever hard. Like, we didn't get any stronger. No way. No way. No way. No way. If anything, you could make the argument that honestly, Heist was maybe the peak for just ore stacking builds, but for that, it's like the bulk of the player base wasn't that. So it's so strange. Look, it's me. Like relative player power is based off of like the smallest of builds. There's the jacket. So this is exactly like Torchlight's. Torchlight 1 had the system. It is a very manipulative chart, which is interesting. Some gambling things. I don't mind this at all, honestly. I wish this was actually a currency sync. Last Epoch has it also. Yeah, I mean, Torchlight 1 had it. That's like 10, 15 years ago. So this concept has been around forever. They pretty much zooped that. The concept of the ward mechanic that whatever has, that's straight from Last Epoch also. These are basically just blight maps. This is cool though. I like new uniques. These uniques seem cool. Never deal crits battle mage. It's an interesting helmet. Looks good. Faith guard. Interesting part though is this helmet requires level of 25. Low level uniques are very nice. I like to see that in League. If they actually call it Warden Last Epoch also, or Epic, sorry. If that's the case, that's just also sad. But yeah, I like new uniques. 19 support gems. Only one is shown here. I guess that hasn't loaded in. That's cool. Did it say how many are being introduced? New uniques and base types. A new defensive mechanic. Nothing new. Just that amount. New gems. Strength in combat. Yep. Champion in contest. Swiftness in the hunt. Agilities in the shadows. This seems quite cool. Which one is it? Is it Forbidden Right? No, it's a Summon Reaper. Seems very fucking nice. I don't think they'll be suited for intellectual property theft because again, it's an idea from Torchlight 1. Righteous Battle, making pathways more challenging. Yada yada yada. Flasks, fucking hyper gutted. Basalt got super shit on. Nope. Not yet. Nuke. Chilling Ground. And reduced freeze effect, which does nothing. Topaz. Use when you become shocked is fine. What's the level of Reaper? Bada boom. 28. Same as Spectres. Stib Knight. Evasion. Smoke Cloud. Stun Flask. And some sort of rarity flask. We don't know about Diamond Flask yet. Battle Royale. Battle Royale memes. Supported packs. What do we got for supported packs here? Okay, so that's the small supported pack. Middle, Giga. Small, middle, Giga. Is that the portal? Portal frame, portrait frame, portal frame. Nope. What is this? I don't know what that is. I think the new lightning arrow skill will be viable with minions. What are you talking about? The lightning rain of arrows? Which one? That is a Giga sword. See anything news happen over here?
Yes, because it even consumes your Animate Guardian, as we saw in the video.
No real information on here, honestly, at
I
all.
like that. So Eye of Winter is a skill that has been a long time coming, I think. Where there's some specific challenges in designing and balancing the skill.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because the base version of this that we were inspired by is from a game that doesn't support gems, and so we had to be very careful when designing the Path of Exile version to make sure that it works well when you do crazy stuff, right? And the obvious question is what happens with multiple projectiles, and the answer here is that the final blast of shards is the one that gets the additional projectiles. That can shotgun, right? So that's quite an interesting choice we had to make, because you have the question of shooting the eye into the boss and having a lot of those shards hit the boss at the same time is very damaging, and that's one of the really iconic ways of using this type of skill, the ability to aim that correctly. Now, the true degeneracy comes from traps, mines, totems, unleash, all that kind of stuff, right? Like, you can have some eyes on the screen. Let's just say we designed this one for performance.
Okay. Mana Bond seems to mess around with the concept of mana casters. Does the bonus damage from the missing mana scale up as your maximum mana increases, or is it based on the percentage of missing mana instead? So does it scale the same way?
It cares about the number of points of missing mana. So you want your mana pool to be as big as possible, and then you want to have emptied it if you're caring about damage there. So for the area of effect increase, it cares about percentage of missing, and for actual damage increase, it cares about numeric mana missing.
Okay, so the damage scaling still fits into the kind of meta of mana casters that exists currently. Yep. Even though it kind of flips it on its head a little bit conceptually.
I don't think they had the list of list of gems, did they here?
Let's move on to difficulty, the big stuff. What can we expect from behavioral and balance changes where the specific terminology mentioned to monsters in the campaign?
Everything.
There's a lot of stuff here, and it's kind of what happens if you go through and redo stuff, in 2021 that you set up a long time ago. Like, you have to remember, when we first set up Path of Exile's early acts,
15.
I mean, it's had some maintenance since then, but we were children, essentially.
Why is there only one
making our first game,
here?
right? Like, we were in our early 20s,
Scion, right?
have never done one of these before, right?
Yeah.
So it took some actual, adult supervision now for people, like...
Yeah, okay, so let's take a look at all these skills. And let's look at this wheel thing. So, this is just hammered in. So for people who don't know, this is just a Diablo 3, or sorry, a Diablo 2 build that was just ported over. It was super fucking cool in there. And let's see. Look at their wheels real quick. Okay, so we're gonna make this wheel or add the stuff. The things I was missing. Definitely taking a fucking spectral throw now. Let's go on. Scion had what? Ascendant? Was it Ascendant or Scion? New skill. Okay, we're definitely picking Hammerden thing. So it's called Spectral Helix. That's happening. Next set. Earthbreaker is the melee totems. Rage Vortex looks like dog shit, so does Bone Shatter. Melee totems will be probably good. I think. EQ totems, Ground Slam totems, Tech Slams, and whatever. Some sort of totems. What do I have for Chieftain? Tech Slam. Well, we're just going to put totems. Problem solved there. What's it called again? Earthbreaker. Earthbreaker totems. Done. Sunder totems. Yeah, sure. So I have a missing champion, berserker, guardian. Guardian's using that new fucking... What was that new thing called? Where is it, little schmeat boy? Not you. What the fuck is it? Battle Mage is... No, that's the Battle Mage thing. Absolution. Absolution. Absolutisms. That'll for sure be absolution. Is that right? I did. Okay, Berserker. I don't know what else I do for Berserker. Berserker's kind of dog shit still. The flash throwing skill will definitely make for... It's very cool. That is just so flavorful, the flask thing. Like, explosive concoction is very cool. Yeah, I have to. Explosive concoction. Level 28 as expected, but it's very fucking cool. Yeah, where's Necromancer? Fuck that. We're doing the Reaper thing for that, for sure. That Reaper shit is too cool. Summon Reaper. Come on, man. You can't not pick that. Cannot pick the Reaper's like so cool. So we got Berserker is still missing something. What does Berserker want? What does Berserker want? None of this new shit really looks berserkery. Berserker gets the rage thing. I don't know about that one. Shield crush. Behead. Oh yeah, Raider's still missing. Oh no. Rage Vortex feels like a meme and a half. They have tags, yeah. They have tags. That shit looks terrible, dude. Looks terrible. Champion should be fucking Shield Crush. That's kind of cool. Champion should be Shield Crush. Does that have flat scaling? It has flat scaling and armor or evasion on shield, so it scales with both, not either. It's both, either, not both. I mean, that's fine. And then the lightning one looks terrible. No. Yeah, per 15 is like, if you do the, it's a good amount of flat considering like line ice is like 2k instantly. Raider, what does Raider want? Well, it really depends on patch notes. You can easily do just like Eye of Winter. Like, oh, do they have projectile tags or no? Spell projectile cold. The whole thing's a projectile, it's even easier to scale it. Even easier to scale it. Elliot's gonna get nuked, there's no way it's not gonna get nuked. Alright, so someone picked Berserker yet. Still have not picked Berserker yet. Where do you see that red? Storm Rain is just so bad looking. Just slams. Okay, let's just do the old check, right? We got Berserker and Ultimatum. Let's take out General's Cry. What is that left with? Just nothing, man. Just pure memes. Pure fucking memes. We could do reverse chill something. They all hate Forge builds. They're all, what is this? I don't know, some staff builds? First chill staff builds. Just delete Berserker from Wheel. Oh man, kind of feels like that sometimes, doesn't it? Only looking for Berserker now. What Berserker builds do you think are viable here? Leap Slam, Totem, Berserker. Leap Slam, Totem, Berserker. Or do you just go back to Flicker Strike? The good. You just put Flicker Strike back on. Flicker strike. 2 words apparently. Who knew? Okay. All right, I think that's it. So we just gotta wait for the, I guess final. We just gotta wait for manifesto, and then that'll tell us if like Burning Arrow is unplayable. We can remove it and something. You know, a lot of these things might become literally unplayable. Spellslinger might be unplayable now. Flame Wall Spellslinger, Sanguinary Spellslinger might be actually unplayable because we don't know. How, they said COC, but I don't know. They don't say for sure what the numbers are. Like, if Spellslinger requires mana, 0% chance I'm playing it. Because why? I would just fucking just cast it. Like, I don't understand. I mean, what is the benefit now of triggering things? Is Archmage safe? We have no idea. We have no idea. We have no idea. We have absolutely no idea. I don't know. I have no idea, Carlon. I have no idea how you're supposed to play trigger builds now after the nerf. But we don't know the numbers. Let's just wait for manifesto. It said trigger in general. I imagine that includes even cast when damage taken. Yeah, I have no idea. I have no idea. Why Toxic Green Trickster? I have never played Toxic Green in my life. Yeah. Maloney's, Ass and S, all dead items, I guess. Yeah, but you can automate minions being summoned, but the thing is now that automation might cost mana. Did we hit anything in the bingo card already? I mean, it's not time yet, but nothing that they named, but they didn't really. All the nerfs they named were like generic ones. I mean, I didn't have COC on here, so yeah. Either way, gonna save that now. It's good to know. Good to know. Question is, does the wheel is it updated now? No, it's not updated. I have to do a new link. Why do they make me do this? Every time. The Reaper looks super interesting. Reaper looks super interesting. But I'm not sure how clunky it's going to be. I think that this league will yet again have god-awful retention, but who knows? Because it just seems extremely complicated. You know, it just seems really complicated, unfortunately. I worry. It looks kind of slow, but also you got to remember that, like, it's like just not quite zoomed in enough. Why is it that the case? You got to understand that, like, it might seem slow base speed wise, but if you put on, if it gets onslaught, if it gets feeding frenzy, you know, these things go crazy. Many attacks have chance to cause bleeding. They inflict more damage than bleeding. So it's interesting because it's like, it's like a physical bleed specter. See, we have to check the PVDB on it, even if it was like viable to see how it scales. Physical minion spell tags. It'll probably have hidden tags for damage over time, deflecting bleeding. Things like brutality could be really good. Gem levels as always. Awakened melee fizz, like that sort of stuff. I have no idea. If it has super high base damage, it could be a huge bleed. I'm not sure. We have no idea. Maybe at level 21 or 26 that you get 2 Reapers, and then one of them eats the other one or something, and they fight. Who knows? You know, we don't really have a lot of information yet. We don't have a lot of information yet. We do not know how you could do any of this stuff. Really, all we have is base knowledge, my friends. All we have is base knowledge. But it looks cool, either way. But yeah, any last questions for the day? Because we're pretty much gonna probably end it around now.